Resuming debate, the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I'm pleased to speak on Bill C-21. As you may have noticed, I have not spoken on this bill or any bill related to guns for a very specific reason. I find it exceptionally difficult to speak about this issue, given the work I have done in the past, but I do feel a need to weigh in today, Madam Speaker, given the enormous amount of misinformation that's coming forth. And I want at the outset acknowledge that the bill as amended and at this stage does not impact hunters, does not impact Indigenous peoples. Section 35 rights, charter rights are protected with a non-derogation clause. And I do want to center this conversation on why this piece of legislation is deeply, deeply important to me and to my riding and to my community. About 20 years ago, Madam Speaker, 1997, December the 27th, a young man, a 19-year-old University of Waterloo student, was shot at a coffee shop in Scarborough. His name is Kabilan Balachandran, and I've spoken about him before. And he sparked, at that time, what was a movement to really counter the violence and the gun violence we've seen in our community. At that time, so he will be 44 today, or this year. He'll be 44 years old. A life of boundless opportunities and boundless potential achievements cut short because of gun violence. My involvement in community work really started off just after that. This organization called the Canadian Tamil Youth Development Center was started because of Kabilan in 1999. And for the next 4 years or so, I was able to run the organization as its coordinator on a voluntary basis. And I can tell you the amount of hours we put in, hundreds of hours a month to support young people who are impacted by violence and the community that was really struggling with violence. A couple of years later, in 1999, I believe, two young men were shot point blank at 720 Kennedy Road. They were students at SATEC Academy. And I was able to meet with the family, and in fact, I'm still in touch with that family, those families. And what we have, the pain I saw amongst his friends, amongst his classmates, amongst those who are impacted, particularly the mother, is something I can never forget, Madam Speaker. We have one of the mothers essentially stood in front of a window waiting for her son to come back. And we know he never came back, never came home. And then we saw other attacks, other gun-related incidents that impacted many young people. And I've been profoundly impacted by this, Madam Speaker. In fact, my views on guns in many ways is shaped by this history. Just before I ran for office, when I ran for the nomination, July 16th, 2012, there's a community in my riding called Danzig, and it's a community that is impoverished in many ways, but it's surrounded by an incredible community. And they were having a barbecue on the 16th of July 2012. And we had, again, an incident that involved the death of two young men and 24 injured. In many ways, I don't have to look at mass casualties or mass gun violence outside of my riding. It happened right there in the middle of the summer impacting so many young people, so many families, and it shook the community to the core. And we in fact marked the 10th anniversary of their passing just last year. And I can tell you that the pain really hasn't gone away. And then, Madam Speaker, after I was elected in 2017 on July 23rd, Demal Graham, one of my residents, was shot in front of his daughter. And we had a chance to visit the family and meet with Shauna, his mother, and his children, and his daughter and his siblings. And again, Madam Speaker, the hurt continued. And the pain may be different. It may be 10 years later. It may be people of different backgrounds, different faiths, different upbringing. They may be from rural communities. But ultimately, the pain inflicted on the families who are impacted is just unbelievable. Louis March, who is from the Zero Gun Violence movement, and I've spent quite a bit of time together. In fact, when the Minister of Justice came to my riding in 2019, we had a roundtable, and he really was able to give us firsthand his experience with many of the mothers of those young men who were killed by gun violence. And we can argue here, and I think we've been arguing a fair bit, and I don't for a second pretend I know my friend opposite who just spoke about living in rural Canada. I'm not going to pretend to know that. I also want him to know that he may not know about living in an inner city in a place like the city of Toronto or any of the major centers, and I don't want to presuppose that. But our conversation needs to be elevated. It cannot just be about, no, we are not going to touch and restrict weapons of guns of any form. I think that's in fact a conversation that really fails Canadians. What the Minister of Public Safety has brought forward is, I believe, a very balanced legislation that does protect hunters, that makes sure that the right to hunt, and I have never hunted, Madam Speaker, and I don't think I will ever hunt. And to me, but that's not the point. The point is there are many Canadians that do, and they do it lawfully. And this is not about taking away their ability to hunt. This is not, as I said earlier, about the ability of Indigenous people to exercise their Section 35 rights. Ultimately, this is about bringing forward legislation that may not be perfect, that may not fully address the issues of gun violence, because that alone is not enough. Banning the C-21 alone is not enough. We know more needs to be done, and that's why the Minister of Public Safety has brought forward funding to support communities. We have brought forward today Bill C-48 to address serious violent offenders. And ultimately, I think we would do Canadians injustice if we don't move this bill along. I think there's been sufficient debate. Oftentimes, the debate is elevated, and I don't want to go into the process, but obviously this could have been done better. But what I can assure you, Madam Speaker, is this is something that my community needs. Scarborough needs this. City of Toronto needs this. Major cities need this. And I know Canada needs this, Madam Speaker. So I look forward to questions and comments from my colleagues. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to be able to share some of my experiences with gun violence. Thank you, Madam Speaker.